Welcome to the Sustainable Tech Alliance webinar. The topic for this session is what a Biden presidency means to save energy and purge COVID-19. Okay, the plan. Here's what Biden is up to. It's about building a modern, sustainable infrastructure and an equitable, clean energy future. Now, what's so exciting for all of us in this energy efficiency and disinfection space is that he's looking to upgrade 4 million buildings. Now, the weatherization is important. That's fine for the homes and creating at least 1 million good-paying jobs. But the building retrofit and the manufacturing supply chain are highlighted here because that's where we can really add value. By funding what they're proposing, this direct cash rebates and low-cost financing, that is an incredible help also for the customers to adopt the types of technology that we're going to be talking about today. In addition to buildings for commercial use, he's talking about housing. So spurring the construction of this 1.5 million sustainable homes is fine, but the housing units is really where we're going to dig in and look at the apartment buildings, condos, co-ops, where we can add a lot of value for not only, again, energy optimization with the HVAC and also the lighting, but the disinfection of the air. When it comes to innovation, another part of the plan that he's outlined, and these are all, quotes taken right out of his joebiden.com website /clean-energy, is this critical clean energy technologies in terms of driving the dramatic cost reductions. So that means often buying technology for the government footprint, which is 3.4 billion square feet. And the Made in America piece is an incredibly important part of that. We're going to talk today about the technologies that meet the Buy American Act compliance. Okay, the 3 major categories today include HVAC energy optimization, and these are members of the Sustainable Tech Alliance. First being the Energy Intelligence Center. The second on the agenda today is PURGE virus for the germicidal disinfection. And the third is Independence LED for the lighting. Okay, we're going to start with the HVAC and American made with the solutions from the logic through to the project management. When it comes to how we explain what the Energy Intelligence Center does, this car tire pressure analogy is something that's really resonated with people. So in this example, the target tire pressure in pounds per square inch, or PSI, is between 42 and 45, and that's based on the driving conditions. Now, I can tell you, having personally driven Teslas, the difference is you get higher traction for acceleration at 42, but higher efficiency in terms of the mileage per, the battery charge. Now, this mile per gallon, in an example of a traditional car, drops very slightly if the tire pressure does not match the manufacturer specs. And here's where it's relevant to HVAC. This EIC, Energy Intelligence Center's OptiKW, which stands for Optimizing Kilowatts, is software that automatically maintains the optimal settings for HVAC for the equipment based on outside temperatures, humidity, and dew points. Imagine you're driving your car and in the evening, you have cooler air and slightly lower tire pressure. Well, this software automatically would replenish the tire pressure. And it does it every hour, in fact, every 10 minutes of every hour of every day, 24/7. So the software ensures maximum optimization of kilowatts every 10 minutes. And it's important to understand that that's for old as well as new HVAC equipment, because of some of the feedback to the Energy Intelligence Center is from the facility managers. We just bought recently new equipment and it's already optimized. Well, a brand new car needs to have the right tire pressure, just like an old car. And the same is true for the pressures, the temperatures, and the flows inside the chiller plants and the HVAC systems for big buildings as well as small buildings. Okay, load sharing, synchronization, and autopilot. Well, what we're going to talk about is autopilot a little bit later, but the load sharing is about the chillers and running at peak efficiency that's often 65% of load capacity. But many facilities are running their chillers up to full capacity. Now that's like redlining a car. OptiKW distributes cooling loads across the chillers based on the exact specs of each chiller and the outside air conditions. We're matching the needs of that particular piece of equipment to the way it was designed. We're running it to its optimal level of efficiency. With synchronization, we're talking about dozens of pieces of equipment within the HVAC system that are typically maintained or previously tuned prior to the engagement. Well, like an orchestra conductor, we can synchronize the equipment and the ambient conditions to create the harmony that results in optimization and energy savings. Now with big data is the sort of the anchor to autopilot. OptiKW maps thousands of data points with dozens of pieces of equipment within the HVAC system via a platform that generates machine learning and artificial intelligence. The result is next generation smart buildings. And I can tell you when it comes to this machine learning, one of the accounts up in New England saw that they typically wouldn't have the chillers off except for the dead of winter, like January and February, because the cooling demand was so high for this mixed use laboratory. Well, within 10 days of the OptiKW system running, they called to ask, why are the chillers off? And can you turn them back on because something in the algorithm may have gone wrong? And the feedback was pretty straightforward. Give it a couple hours. This was 9 o'clock at night. They were in a little bit of a tailspin, wondering what was going on. And the feedback was at 11 o'clock, thank you for turning the chillers back on. Well, no one turned the chillers back on except the algorithm. The system taught the chillers how to rest and when to come back on. And so this idea of smart buildings is now manifested in this OptiKW software. Okay, steps to implement. It begins with a questionnaire, like a data sheet with fields to fill in about the type of equipment and the energy use. It goes on then, and that's typically a free deliverable, which is the preliminary assessment. It goes on to, in some cases, site visits if necessary, and then investment grade audits to learn about the specific equipment down to the deeper details. You know, it's the serial number on the chiller, and it's the variable frequency drives in the cooling tower. And then it's the performance agreement, and it includes a breakdown of what is expected to save in terms of energy with the energy conservation measures and a blueprint for how to execute. Given the go, it's about custom programming development to align all of those data points. And then it's implementation time to get it going live. That's typically taken, 8 to 10 weeks, 2.5 months. What OptiKW is launching in 2021 is going to be an Internet of Things, really innovative model. And I put a note here down at the bottom, consisting of machine learning and the AI. And with this development, the diagnosis and the solutions can be done online and really dodge the time and the effort on the site visit by connecting to the building management systems. Okay, the steps include obviously this initial phase, and the information needed to really provide a preliminary assessment is pretty simple. It's the property type, it's the property zip code, and it's the annual electricity cost. And what the type does is it often tells the whole team at OptiKW about the use. If it's a hospital, it might be 24/7, and we can use ASHRAE standards, the Association of Heating and Refrigeration Engineers, to determine what are standards and then use that as a benchmark for the preliminary analysis. The zip code is incredibly important because with weather stations that are often in nearby airports, we can pull trend data on the temperatures, humidity, and dew point to align that with the utility expenses. And so that gives us an unbelievable starting point. When it comes to the deeper dive, the page that includes the data sheet is on the Energy Intelligence Center website at the OptiKW page. Okay, it's as simple as a programmable logic control board, typically in the range of 20 to 30 inches, and an Ethernet cable that connects to the building management system. So again, it's not disrupting the equipment or it's not disrupting the end users. It's not changing the thermostat settings like 99% of all building management systems that claim optimization. Those are terrific. They're very sophisticated clocks in a way that can adjust the temperature, for example, in the summer so that it may be warmer in the evening and saving some energy if it is a single shift operation. Those are fine and good. Our team loves working with those systems. And whether it's Johnson Controls, Medisys, or other systems, the idea here is to connect with it so the language is two-directional. 10 years running, over 100 million kilowatt hours saved. And the idea here of the small adjustments, like that reference I made in the very beginning to the air pressure in the tire of the car, is not going to dramatically change the hourly consumption, but it sure is going to have an impact if that car is running 24/7 every hour of every day. Okay, here's an example of where one of those micro changes can have an impact. 700,000 square foot hospital in Maryland. That's a screenshot of the building management system. What we saw, and I was personally on site for this one, is that they had about a 72-degree day and they were targeting about 68-degree indoor temperature. They were not running their cooling tower to full capacity, but they were putting stress on the chiller at an unnecessary level. So by increasing the tower, the cooling tower fan speed, we could reduce the condenser water entry temperature. And that small increase in the energy cost created a much larger reduction in the chiller energy consumption, because about 70% of energy consumption in chillers is in the compressor. Okay, it was set before we touched it at 176.4 kW. In an hour, that would be about at 10 cents, a kilowatt hour, about $17 an hour. And it dropped within 90 seconds in front of the prospective account to 133. So a 43 kW drop. And the way the math worked out is the cost for the increased fan was 3.81 kW. So in a dollar sense, what was spending about $3.81, 38 cents, right? 3.81 at the 10 cents, saved $4.30. So you subtract out the cost, the added cost of the energy from the gain, the benefit, and you end up with spending about 40 cents to save $4 every hour of every day. With 8,760 hours in a year, that small measure, pushing that one button, saved over $32,000. Now, some of the buildings we've worked with can save well over $100,000. In this example, the micro change compounded to what would be over time a significant impact. Now, the facility team asked us on the job site, well, how could we possibly go in every hour to determine the exact right hertz increase on the cooling tower to balance the condenser water entry temperature? And we said, how about you don't do anything? How about the algorithm does the work for you? This is adding a brain to an existing facility that already has equipment. The result, by the way, ends up being 15 to 40% of the consumption of energy in actual savings. And the way that we have to demonstrate the savings is through multiple paths. It's either the International Performance Measurement and Verification Protocol, IPMVP, which has certain standards. In some cases, facilities have recent BMS systems, typically in the last 10 years, that are already capturing data, the amperage data to the hour. We can convert that to kW based on voltage. And in many cases, they also are archiving trailing year or two of data. That sets an excellent benchmark. If we don't have those options, the facility managers can turn OptiKW off and on just as a pilot can do so with autopilot. And they can see within the same month the actual savings. Now, this enables facility managers to see the actual energy savings at any time, and it is particularly key for new construction where there's not a trailing history. We've also forged a relationship with companies like Building Fit that provide third-party data analytics and measurement and verification. So the customers can see what is coming in terms of past and current versus using a lot of math to calculate it. It's right there on their screens. I mentioned this before, saving 15 to 40%. That's a gigantic number without having to touch typically the burden of the balance sheet for new equipment costs for some of these large scale facilities. Okay, some proven results. In these cases, district cooling plants and office buildings, dairies, all the way down to hotels, the savings ranges from, in this case, 21, 20%, 24%, some hit 40. It's all a function of the type of equipment that they have and the connectivity and how well they're currently optimizing. But we have not been in many buildings that have not been able to generate at least 15% energy savings. Here's the type of chart that shows the performance. So back in 2011, the red is the prior and the green is the new from 2012 using the algorithm. Terrific. This is saving 2,275 kilowatt hours at a daily level. That translates to $204, and that was at 9 cents. That's $74,000 a year for this particular hotel without changing equipment and without spending typically any money up front, because the compensation comes on a percentage of the savings. Here's another one where they actually turned the system off. This is a massive district cooling plant that has, it's 10 2,500 ton chillers for a capacity of 25,000 tons. So that is the size of dozens and dozens of hotels. A hotel could have a pair of, 250 or 400, 500 ton chillers. So each one of these chillers is the equivalent of like 5, potentially 3 to 5 hotels, and it's a massive enterprise here. So with the optimization below the benchmark in terms of performance, and then when they turned it off, it went back up, optimization back on, saving more energy. Okay, here are some ideal customer highlights. Large chiller systems. That's an excellent place to start. HVAC equipment intensive, meaning they use a lot of cooling. So that is better than maybe a law firm that's inside of a big office building that is, in a cooler climate. The BMS with data capture and archives is ideal, but not required. Climates with warm summers is preferred for the maximum savings. And then 24/7 operations also can extend the work of the algorithm to generate results. Examples that are ideal customers include hotels and hospitals, apartment buildings, data centers, district cooling plants, refrigerated warehouses, dairies, and other process cooling facilities. Okay, why now? We're closing this sort of chapter on the Energy Intelligence Center. We are seeing with COVID compression on revenue, whether that is less guests at a hotel or at a restaurant. The reality is we're going to be stuck with this COVID for at least the next few months until there's a vaccine, and probably well into 2021, if not beyond. Now, HVAC is often 50% or more of a building's energy costs. So saving 15 to 40% is a very meaningful impact for net profit, right? Because if revenue comes down, so does profit, but energy costs are often fixed. What we can do here is with an average, say, 100,000 square foot building, $1 per square foot per year in savings translates to $100,000 each year in savings. Very meaningful. Okay, next, we're going to change gears from the HVAC system, and we're going to get into the germicidal disinfection. So part of the Biden plan to upgrade these 4 million buildings is going to include energy efficiency, but also wellness, because the reality is COVID is right up in our face with unbelievably scary numbers just coming out of even the last couple of days in terms of hospitalization and, the 10 million plus cases that are growing. So here's what we have. Buy American Act compliant technologies that clean the air. This is for ultraviolet as well as bipolar ionization. We're going to dig in here and just say that COVID-19 has created a new normal. It sucks, but we're here to help. The cost-effective germicidal disinfection plus the personal protection equipment can save lives. We can help business owners navigate the complexity of disinfection and personal protection. Okay, here's what we do. one-stop shop at Purge Virus for proven and cost-effective germicidal disinfection of air and surfaces across the commercial and residential landscape. We can also provide personal protection equipment, the PPE, to further help reduce the spread of COVID and future viruses. A buffet, a whole range of technologies to make the meal that is right for any particular building. Ultraviolet, bipolar, photoplasma, and more technologies. State-of-the-art with performance reporting from US and global manufacturing partners matched to the disinfection needs of each client across this diverse range of property types, whether it's healthcare or hospitality, restaurants, education, K through 12 schools, universities, retail, offices, or industrial. Now, we can provide solutions for every type of indoor facility. Over 50,000 disinfection devices installed via our manufacturing partners since the 1960s. And CEO happens to be me for this presentation. Leader in sustainability with implemented technologies for many Fortune 500 companies and notable properties such as Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, where we have over $1 million of the American-made lights installed. Okay, we're going to continue on why Purge Virus. Premier customer support, easy to fill out data sheets for client proposals, and performance and testing reports. So I'm going to go to this chart with in-room disinfection, in-duct disinfection, coil and pan, personal protective equipment, and then qualified installers, plus all the rigor of the documentation for how this technology in any given assignment has matched the needs of whether it's the EPA or other testing groups. Now, sales channel, trained and supported with continuing education on new technologies and custom tailored marketing materials to attract, engage, and convert prospects into customers. Disinfection and portability. So this is really an interesting subset. And I can tell you that from some prior events, we've had them at events where the facility did not take initially the leadership to disinfect the air, but the organizers of the events brought in technologies that could be plugged in the wall to really sanitize air through that disinfection at the event. They come ready for install and instant use with plugs for standard outlets. Small devices, 10 by 8 by 4 inches deep, coverage area of 142 square feet. At a ACH is the air changes per hour of 6, which is pretty typical. They can be put on counters or shelves or mounted on the wall. And then they're larger devices. This happens to be one of them, closer to 20 inches by 18 by about 8. And they can cover, in ranges from 160 up to 1,000 square feet with the push of a button to increase the fan speed because they're drawing the air in from the room, passing it by the disinfection, which is typically ultraviolet C, and then pushing it out for redistribution into the room. Okay, in-duct is much more cost-effective typically than the portables, but it has the need for an installer. So this is also part of the normal that we should have clean air coming out of our ducts. Just as a sprinkler system, can help prevent the spread of fires, ultraviolet light is proven to help prevent the spread of viruses. So leveraging the systemic advantages of HVAC ductwork, like the blood in your body, it's a powerful means to purge COVID. Think of the trunk of a tree or a main artery as the source, and then all the branches or the smaller veins are where that air is flowing. So as the return air comes in, if you can capture it and pass it through, as the air handling systems do, a gate that is the insert with the ultraviolet devices, you're creating the ability to flood that zone and purge COVID. When it is at a larger scale, you end up having a larger gate. So in this case, it was about 16 feet by a little bit over 11 feet when we sized this system. And we take the cubic feet per minute from that air handler. So looking on the upper left of this towards that coil system, the devices will create the gate, and they're sized according to time, intensity, and distance for the air, with the microorganisms of COVID as the target. So the faster the air is traveling, the more ultraviolet we need for those dosages. And in this case, the installed cost came in, it was budgeted here between 22, 23 cents and up to about 33 cents, which is not uncommon per square foot of the coverage area that is being disinfected. Pretty cost effective, right? Every 100,000 square feet might save, with the prior reference to the Energy Intelligence Center, $1 a square foot. This cost is less than typically a third of that. So part of the reason we're having this webinar to combine the stories within the Sustainable Tech Alliance is they work well together as siblings. Okay, just like the data needs to be provided to get an assessment for the OptiKW software, in this case, there's some questions that we need answered to size the right technology to the particular facility. So in a duct system, we'd want to know the duct width and height and the length and the cubic feet per minute. The deeper dive, of the questionnaire is on the PURGE virus website, and you can download that file directly on the technologies page. Okay, sample track record. I'm not going to read every one of these, but it goes from, with the U.S. government, facilities where our manufacturing partners that we've aggregated into this PURGE virus, umbrella for one-stop shopping, range from the Air Force and Navy hospitals. Institutions like the Infectious Disease Research Institute have this technology. The healthcare, whether it's New York State Department of Health or the Albert Einstein Medical Center and more. Big food and beverage adoption prior to COVID, because the bacteria and the issues that come with food processing can be purged with ultraviolet as well. So whether it's Safeway or Anheuser-Busch, Minute Maid, Ralston, Purina, Pepperidge Farms, the list goes on. Proven adoption, proven technology. Princeton University on the education front with Cornell and other schools. And then with pharma, Merck, Bristol Myers, and Eli. So other customers like IBM, that's all fine and good for those companies that aren't as big as an IBM or a 3M. But the point is, the technology has been proven by the early adopters, and now we're bringing it in the right size and form, same type of devices, to the smaller and mid-sized businesses, all the way down to a dental practitioner. Okay, bipolar ionization is a companion technology that can, in some cases, do what the ultraviolet can do. But I'll tell you what's really exciting about bipolar is the science behind it, and it's emerging and coming really to the forefront without the prior burden of ozone. So manufacturing partners with proven results also, 99.4% reduction rate of COVID, surface strain within 30 minutes. Terrific. So the laboratory study was designed to mimic ionization conditions like commercial aircraft, fuselages. And within 10 minutes, you could get down to 84%, inactivization, and then 15 minutes, 92, and 30 minutes up to that 99.4. So this is part of the exciting path going forward about some of the newer technologies that we can introduce to our customers. Now, the other one that's really pretty exciting is disinfection up in the ceiling, where you can occupy the space, just like in the other examples, but the LED light is used as a fixture, and you're drawing air up to facilitate the inactivization of the COVID microorganism. So the air is ingested in, powerful but quiet fans, initial air filtration and the oxidization, continuous oxidization along the corridor pathways. That's called a photocatalytic reactor. And then the UVC at the 265 exposure along the corridor pathways. Some of the previously discussed devices have 253.7 nanometer, rounded up to 254, which is one of the top assassins. Anything in that ultraviolet C wavelength level has been proven to do incredible damage to COVID and the prior viruses because of the reduction and its ability to replicate. So you're really neutering at a fundamental level COVID. Micron charcoal filtration also includes, the solution path for this technology. The disinfection fixtures use both charcoal and micron, and then the dynamic venting and displacement into the safe zone. So you're returning the air clean. Also made here in America, which is part of the discussion today with how it is relevant to the Biden plan, going forward. Okay, from the marketing standpoint, part of the challenge with anything that's new in America is getting the word out and letting the users share in the glow of the good ideas. So there are great ways to let people know what you may have done. Could be door stickers, could be table tents, could be inclusion in a locator app, which is on the next slide, which we're developing. And the idea is to put the word out about clean air. Now, the goal with the app is to help the customers promote themselves and differentiate themselves through the locator. The benefit for the user is if you wanted to go get your haircut, you wanted to go get a sandwich, you'd be able to pull up the map and search by either the type of business or by your location to be able to see which facilities have taken proactive measures to disinfect the air. Some will have done more than others, but at least they have a voice. At least they can share with the public how they've done it, and we can help attract customers to businesses. With personal protection equipment, the challenge here becomes just the mass of noise about different certifications and qualifications and which type of nitrile gloves for the hospitals, or the volume and how to pay for it without having to wire money, overseas and wait a month for the product on a boat, or to pay the extra premium to have it, flown over at certain volumes. So we're very fortunate to have PPE Source International as a strategic partner, because they are in the business of procuring and running through the coordination for all the financing, where now for the bigger volume orders, they can do a model where a third party is actually paying to have the product delivered. The end user pays only when it's landed in the United States. And without going into the detail of the block in terms of the funding, the money is basically recorded as available from the side of the buyer. The third party fronts the money to pay the suppliers and get it to the US. And the money is only released when it has met standards for the certification and the specs to the satisfaction of the buyer. So it's not unlike an escrow account, but it doesn't involve the complexity of escrow where you have to move money into accounts. You're basically, as the buyer, just recording where the bankers are talking to each other that the money is there and it is held in reserve until the product has shipped and met your approval. Okay, why now? Well, here we are, early November, coming up on the middle of November this weekend. The reported COVID cases, in America are now in excess of 10 million. And we've seen the tragedy of, I think it's over 240, quickly on its way to about 250,000 related deaths. Absolutely tragic. We want to get ahead of this as we go into the winter, because it's pretty scary with that season coming. And with over 40% of America experiencing a surge in new COVID cases, now's the time to really take action and rethink these buildings, as we have to be inside more in the winter, with the less flexibility to be outdoors for dining and other activities. Okay, next, we're going to switch gears now from optimizing the HVAC and cleaning the air to the LED lighting. Absolutely proven over the past decade to save 50% or more on energy costs for illumination. Independence LED was one of the very first to meet the Buy American Act compliance, moving the production from Shenzhen to southeastern Pennsylvania in 2010. So, made in America. Check the box for the Biden plan, as well as the private sector that wants to have the assurance of quality. Top return on investment relative to cost and savings. 10 years in business and industry-leading 10-year warranty, and saving over 50% on electricity for illumination. Terrific. So the track record installations range from Morgan Stanley's corporate headquarters to Walter Reed National Military Medical Center, and from small businesses to major real estate development firms such as CBRE. Here's a shot. I think there were dozens of buildings for the Walter Reed job, and even with 30 Navy ships, the Independence LED product is across the Department of Defense, as well as civilian agencies, and many private sector accounts as well. U.S. Department of State, Navy, Marines, Air Force, Department of Veteran Affairs with the Durham Medical Center down in Durham, North Carolina, one of the earliest adopters of the American-made LED lighting. Okay, the new player in the mix now for the Sustainable Tech Alliance is OptiLumen, and I can tell you this is a very powerful tool. Troughers typically have fluorescent tubes. Those are the 2 foot by 4 foot, or sometimes the 2 foot by 2 foot fixtures in office ceilings that have either the U-bend or the straight fluorescent tubes. Well, replacing those with LED tubes is a pretty great idea, but replacing them with these LED strips is an absolutely awesome idea. And that's because you don't have to pay for the thermal management to keep the semiconductors cool when the sealing of the fixture is transferring with a magnet-backed strip that heat up into the plenum where the air is flowing across the top of the fixtures. New for BAA compliance this quarter, and an unbelievably high 185 lumens per watt. So top efficiency plus fast and easy installation in under 5 minutes. Even the driver has a magnet on the back, and it's without the time and cost to replace fixtures or repair tombstones. So this is very important for those of you that are interested in lighting. The fixture hauling cost, take it down, get in a dumpster, get in the landfills, is surprisingly high. Over 20%, according to the American Institute of Architects, of all landfill waste is construction debris. So the fixture is basically working, right? The house, it's the guts, the engine block is what needs to be replaced. Think of a townhouse that has a furnace that could be upgraded rather than tearing down the townhouse. Now, what happens with fluorescent tubes is you sometimes damage, or they've already been damaged, the tombstones, which are the little clips, the socket that holds the pins on the tubes. So you can bypass that whole friction of replacing fixtures and damaged tombstones with this OptiLumen technology. The other elegant aspect of it, with the ease of installation, is you can place the strips. Imagine it's a 4-tube fixture, so 4 across. If you were to replace just the tubes, you might end up with 2 on the outside if they were higher output tubes, or 2 on the inside. What you can do with OptiLumen on the magnets is splay them so that they are evenly centered in the fixture. If it was 24 inches across, they'd be every 8 inches, rather than either on the outside or the inside, which means you can use the advantage of the higher output LEDs to achieve equal or greater output in lumens for each fixture with only 2 strips versus replacing each tube. These are also excellent, and I've seen them firsthand at 180,000 square foot warehouse for high bays. So there are many fluorescent tube high bays. They could be either T8 or T5 with 4, 6, or 8 tubes. And the OptiLumen team has designed scalability in terms of output, color temperature, and the length of the strips to have an entire system. And we're excited that the Buy American Act compliance is now right there on the table for what will also be inclusion in the GSA schedule for government purchases as we look at this whole Biden initiative. Why now? Lighting is the low-hanging fruit. Economically, it's an unbelievably easy decision to change the lights because the payback is often under a single year, and there are options for 0 upfront cost payment and service models that can be done on performance of energy savings or financed through a third party. Here's a summary. Our Alliance members have the proven technology to deliver results. The SustainableTechAlliance.com has the tools and the people to be able to deliver what America needs going forward in this unfortunate time of the COVID pandemic to save money and to save lives. We're going to open up the questions via email, electronically, or the contact form on the Sustainable Tech Alliance page, and we will field through the appropriate people at any of the Alliance members the responses to the questions that come up, and really appreciate all of your time today. I hope that this has energized you into understanding the potential of all the technology that's been used in the past and how it's applicable today, commercial and private sector, along with the government, for the Biden plan. Thank you. Tom, we hit it just in about 40 minutes. I wanted to keep it tight. So unless there were some questions that came up that I could easily answer here, we could break. What do you think, Tom? Are you still on the audio there?
I'm on. There are a couple questions for you, Charlie. First one has to do with EIC. Okay. What kind of traction have you gotten with sales from Rich Barone?
Okay, so it's been really interesting with the technology used overseas over the past 10 years in India and Saudi Arabia. And, I had a chance to spend 4 days in Dubai with a hotel and a group that's really getting, I want to say the appetite overseas before COVID was higher than in the US because we've had so much, I think, fossil fuel, whether it's the fracking, the oil, the coal, the nukes, whatever it is. So two of the most exciting projects, recent projects in the United States include it's a university, what was established by one of the leading universities in the world up in New England. And it's a mixed use laboratory building that is on track to save $120,000 a year at $10,000 averaging a month. And that involves chiller plants. Another one that's recent is an office building in Connecticut that is heat pumps. So whether it's the heat pump system or the chiller plants or some other facilities, and I've had a chance to be on site there directly, is the process cooling at a brewery and also at a blast freezing facility. Brewery is Pennsylvania, and the blast freezing facility is in Virginia. That freezes over 80,000 turkeys every single day. So the range is really dramatic. And with a hospital that's now having, I think, the challenges of the current financing, in terms of just paying bills and keeping everyone going and all the mess that's with COVID, the time is more of a distraction in a way than the money. But it'll be really interesting to see as we kind of get these vaccines, how the focus on the OptiKW with the Energy Intelligence Center starts to become more of a priority than the PURGE virus that basically took some of the lead, since the spring in terms of people's interests. So we can follow up electronically with examples of a lot of the case studies and the adoption of the tech. But from the sales perspective, the challenge is that we're creating demand because a lot of people don't realize that there's waste that they've been, in effect, absorbing and paying for on their electric bills. And no one is really Googling, HVAC optimization algorithm because they believe that basically they paid for pretty sophisticated building management systems and automation systems from some billion-dollar companies. So the challenge with disruptive technology is education, and that's one of the reasons why we have this webinar series. Tom, what else is on the list of questions?
What is better for germicidal disinfection, UV or ionization? From Alvaro, gentleman who joined.
So it's really a function of time in terms of the acute nature of what needs to be done. So they're both excellent and have incredible potential. One of the challenges we had in the very beginning of COVID was working with some dental practitioners, where think about how acute that is. You're in someone's mouth cleaning their teeth, right? It's about as bad as it can get, since it's a airborne respiratory contraction of this virus. So having devices right in each room that are either the portable devices that draw the air in, or we also have sold, it's a bunch of the wall mounted devices where the ultraviolet is set 7 feet above the finished floor. The light is cast across the ceiling, so it is upper air disinfection. As the air moves from the lower part of the room up through towards the return ducts, that cycle of 6 or 8 air changes per hour, which is part of that ASHRAE standard, can clean that air within 6 or 8 minutes. And it won't contaminate then the air that is flowing into the other rooms. It can be coupled with in-duct disinfection, but what we found is it's often enough just to have the in-room disinfection for those most acute needs. The bipolar makes a lot of sense when it is used at a systemic level, but as you may remember from that slide, it might be 30 minutes to get into the high 90s for the inactivization of COVID. So if it was a school and there's a classroom that's jam-packed with kids, having some in-room ultraviolet might make sense. Having some in-duct bipolar ionization can take care of that, just as the ultraviolet can also do in the ducts. So we look at each account, we look at the size of the air handling system and ask those questions about the cubic feet per minute and about the size of the duct. We identify then where and how the best technology applies. What's next, Tom, on the list?
Are there health risks of using UVC to kill viruses?
Okay. Health risks come from 2 aspects of disinfection. One is, don't stare into the ultraviolet device if it happens to be the wall mount. If it's the portable one, the ultraviolet is tucked inside, so it's drawing the air in with the fans and it's spitting it out clean. No issue for looking at it. If it's in the ducts, same thing for ultraviolet. If you have the wall mounted system and you stood on a chair and it was at that 7-foot level and you stared into ultraviolet, it's not going to help you. You're going to get some skin cancer, you hurt your eyes. Remember, the stratosphere is our protection ring, beautiful ring around the earth that is keeping ultraviolet from harming humans. By introducing it to the pathogens, we are disrupting that RNA and the DNA and preventing it from replicating. So it's bad for humans, no question. The challenge in the past with the bipolar, with the ionization, was ozone. So now we've identified the partners that make the technologies that do not produce ozone. All the testing, everything's bulletproof, and this is part of the value that I think PURGE virus brings to the market, filtering choices. Ozone can create respiratory issues and all kinds of problems. So as great as it sounded initially, there were the handicaps to ionization. That's been largely solved. So with those 2 notes, don't look at ultraviolet light and don't engage with accounts that maybe jump too quickly to get some ionization and it ends up having ozone.
Okay, the last one we have here is a stockholder question. What are you doing to increase value for shareholders for PURGE virus?
Oh, great question. So events like this to communicate the value proposition are part of an ongoing proactive initiative to educate and attract, engage, and convert the people that are participating in a whole sales network, including the internet and press releases and everything, to become customers. And the idea is to soberly explain choices. So this idea of the one-stop shop is to identify the needs and listen. It's the classic 2 ears, 1 mouth model to their pain points, where they have challenges, what they need to do in terms of the reference I made to a school classroom versus maybe the school cafeteria or the hallways, and identify which technology and size it to their budget as well as the disinfection needs. So it starts with dosage, with that time, intensity, and distance from the pathogens, and how we can set the right technology in place, show them the budget, and then if we need to, carve out through some strategic financing partners the way that they can pay for it. So the goal is to engage with health, to sell the technology that is the right technology to the right customers, and then start to ramp up a whole new way to think beyond COVID-19, real value for shareholders. Disinfection and clean air as a new standard. So clean water comes out of the spigot. We don't take for granted, unless you're in Flint, Michigan, that you're going to get sick from the water. Right now in America, the air coming out of any given duct can be contaminated. Kid in the school classroom coughs, he's asymptomatic, goes up in the ducts, travels from the art room over to the music studio, and he is potentially contaminating an entire batch of schoolmates. So this idea of being an educator is the starting point to communicate and then attract, engage, convert the customers at the residential and the commercial and institutional level to really rethink buildings for existing and new construction. Tom, is that a wrap on some of those questions? Because we can certainly let people follow up, after the session on the internet.
Yeah, that's a wrap for questions we should get into now. For everyone that didn't get their question answered, we'll follow up with an email after this.
Great. Then we might as well close this out. We're 7 minutes before the hour, so I think we hit our numbers.
All right. Thank you all for coming.